I am the most evil grand traitor in history, freely controlling the empire's politics. But even with all my power, there's one thing I can't achieve: an unfulfilled wish. To chase that obsession, I've decided to activate the reincarnation ritual and be reborn. Even if the success rate is only 1%, nothing will change my mind. What's the point of money, power, and martial arts skills? In the end, I still can't escape the fate of losing my true identity. I still remember when I was 12, tricked by a heartless slave trader. He ruthlessly stripped me of who I was and sold me into the palace. Since then, in my desperate quest to recover myself, I saw countless doctors and focused on perfecting my martial arts. I became the strongest fighter in the palace and even controlled the emperor. But no matter how powerful I became, I could never become the person I truly wanted to be again. So, I've prepared for reincarnation. In my next life, I will fulfill that unfulfilled wish, to live a life where I have control over my own fate. Otherwise, the regrets of this life will haunt me forever. Just then, the emperor came running to me, crying, "Grandfather Li, is your unfulfilled wish really that important? If you stop the ritual, I'll grant any wish you have." I refused without hesitation, even ordering my men to force her back to the palace. Maybe because I've seen her grow up, I've always considered her like my little sister. Her offer did make me hesitate for a moment, but I know, as a man, the greatest pain is being unable to fulfill that unfulfilled wish. It's better to die than live like this. So, I commanded the mage to continue the spell. The reincarnation ritual began, and a blinding light shot out from my body. When I opened my eyes again, I found a strange old man sitting next to me. Seeing this, I instinctively tensed up. This man was none other than Wang San, one who had stripped me of my masculinity in my previous life. I was utterly confused. Wasn't he supposed to have been killed by mountain bandits? Why is he here? Could it be that I didn't reincarnate, but was simply reborn? I quickly glanced down to check. Thankfully, everything seemed fine. The old man looked at my sudden movement with confusion. "Kid, do you feel unwell?" he asked. I frowned for a second, then gave him a knowing smile. "Uncle, thank you for saving me, but my wrist hurts a bit. Could you take me to a nearby clinic?" The old man, feigning concern, helped me up and said he had plenty of herbs at home. I snorted coldly and suddenly snapped one of his fingers. "What's this? Planning to kidnap me and strip me of my dignity as a man again?" The old man's eyes widened in shock. You, how did you know?" Before he could finish, I swiftly broke his arm. In my previous life, I was the top expert in the palace. Though I had lost my inner strength, I still remembered all my martial arts techniques. I gripped his throat tightly and said with a harsh voice, "I searched for you in the palace for so long. Do you know how regretful I was when I heard you were killed by bandits? It was you damn slave trader, who made me a eunuch for the rest of my life." Without hesitation, I twisted his neck and spat on his face. In my previous life, I had wealth and power but couldn't enjoy them. But in this life, I'll make sure it's different. I've decided to live for real enjoyment. 2 months later, I was climbing to the peak of Mount Kongtong. For that deep, buried desire in my heart, I was determined to press on. In this world, nothing excites me more than genuine affection and mutual admiration. Sure, I could throw money at my problems, but I refuse to let decades of celibacy be replaced by something so shallow. I need to fall in love with a peerless beauty, to experience that sweet, heart and soul connection. That's the true pleasure I seek. So now, the most important thing is to accumulate wealth and fame. The reason I'm here at Mount Kongkong is to join the Kongtong sect, which is based on Taoism. This sect merges Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism into its martial arts. It's a well-known righteous faction in the martial world. Once I join and gather the right information, I'll soon become a major hero in the martial arts world. Just thinking about it made me smile. A moment later, I finally reached the gates of the Kongtong sect. I respectfully bowed and said, "I am Li Zhexiu. Is anyone here?" Hearing my youthful voice, the old Taoist looked a little surprised. A child daring to climb Mount Kongtong in the dead of winter? No one responded, so I called out louder. "The bandits took my parents from me. I just want to get stronger and avenge them. Please, take me as your disciple." The next second, the old Taoist appeared out of nowhere. A little kid, Alone on Mount Kongtong, aren't you afraid of dying? I answered firmly, none of that matters, compared to joining the Kongtong sect. It's nothing. The old Taoist fell silent for a few seconds, then asked me to extend my arm. He checked my pulse, and immediately recognized that I had used a breathing technique to ascend the mountain, a method based on energy cultivation. Since you've mastered this technique, you must have some martial arts background. Did your parents teach you this? I nodded slightly, keeping my expression neutral, just a way to boost my energy. The old Taoist then introduced himself. I am Kuan Yin, the head of the Kongtong sect. Normally, joining our sect requires passing a series of tests, but seeing your talent, I'll make an exception and take you as a disciple. On the surface, I acted thrilled, but inside, I was smug. How could a sect as falling apart as Kongtong sect possibly reject a new disciple? While thinking about this, I casually did a few pelvic exercises to enjoy true pleasure in the future. I had to start building my strength now. However, when I stepped inside the gates of the Kongtong sect, the sight in front of me left me stunned. Kongtong sect had suffered greatly during the battle between the righteous and demonic forces 50 years ago, but even now, they didn't even have a decent building. It was really too much. Just then, the sect leader spoke again, saying he would introduce me to a senior brother. I already knew who this senior brother was, Liu Chenwei, who would later be called the Sword Saint. This was the perfect time to establish a relationship with him, before he rose to prominence. Suddenly, a fierce snowstorm came at me. Then, a graceful figure appeared right before my eyes. Hello, junior brother, I'm Liu Chenwei. I froze for a moment. This guy, how could he be this handsome? He looked nothing like the picture I'd seen before. It was no wonder so many women fought over him. It was definitely true. Suddenly, I felt a pang of anxiety. If this keeps up, would all the future beauties end up with him? I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Liu Chenwei seemed to notice something was off with me and asked with concern, "Are you feeling unwell?" I casually waved it off. Just a bit shy, but deep inside, I was silently praying, "Please tell me his masculinity is only 3 centimeters. Then, Liu Chenwei suddenly grabbed my arm. "Come with me, I'll show you around the sect." He pulled me along like a kite on a string. Though I felt a bit uncomfortable, I still followed him, but eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and forcefully shook off his hand. "Senior brother, let go!" I couldn't help but shout. Liu Chenwei was stunned for a moment, then looked a bit embarrassed. It's my first time having a junior brother. I got too excited. Did I scare you? I quickly apologized. Sorry, I overreacted. My bad. Now wasn't the time to dwell on things. I had to maintain a good relationship with Liu Chenwei. He smiled and started telling me about the history of the Kongtong sect. Apparently, after the righteous demonic war, the sect was left with just the Xuanwan Palace, where the sect leader lived, and the Qingyun Pavilion where the disciples stayed. But don't worry, Liu Chenwei said confidently, Kongtong sect won't fall into decline. When the demon sect attacked us, no one expected them to strike Kongtong sect first. He continued. I suddenly interrupted him. Senior brother, I understand you want to tell me about the sect's history, but could you keep a little distance? I'm kind of shy. Liu Chenwei's expression froze, a bit of disappointment showing on his face. Oh, sorry. Seeing him look down, I quickly stepped forward and added, Senior brother, please continue with the history of Kongtong sect. Hearing this, Liu Chenwei laughed happily, while I wore a smug expression. It's easy to flatter a boy my age. All you need to do is say what they want to hear. But to my surprise, Liu Chenwei seemed a bit too excited and without realizing it, put his arm around my shoulder. In broad daylight, 2 boys linking arms like that, what in the world was happening? At the same time, the sect leader watched as the snow gradually faded away, and couldn't help but sigh. Looks like the winter on Mount Kongtong is finally coming to an end. He recalled that 10 years ago, around this time, he had found the orphan Liu Chenwei. After discovering that he was a martial arts genius, he had devoted himself to nurturing him, hoping that Liu Chenwei would help restore the glory of Kongtong sect. Zhexiu's arrival was perfect. It would allow Liu Chenwei to interact with a man of similar age and, in turn, learn how to hide his true gender, so no one would discover that he was a girl disguised as a boy. Back in my room, I lay in bed but couldn't sleep. Today was the first day I joined Kong Tong's sect, such a significant day. But it had all been ruined by Liu Zhenwei. After all, he was Kong Tong's sect's peerless genius in my previous life. His admirers had even caused quite a stir in the martial world. What baffled me, though, was why someone as capable, virtuous, and good-looking as him didn't even look at women. People said he was obsessed with martial arts, but today, I finally understood. He was a full-fledged gay. It made me think back to my life in the palace, where I had seen eunuchs who lacked any masculinity, yet still tried to pave new paths to satisfy their desires, but I wasn't gay. I couldn't let Liu Zhenwei get any inappropriate ideas about me. Looking at my spiritless masculinity, I thought about a different kind of training. Now that it was late and quiet, it was the perfect time to start my hand exercises. At the same time, Liu Zhenwei, now revealing her true identity as a woman, felt a little confused. She couldn't figure out why today she was so unusually warm toward her new junior brother, who had just joined the sect. Maybe it was because having another family member suddenly made her feel happy, and she couldn't help but want to express some emotions. Is this what it feels like to have a brother? Thinking about it, Liu Zhenwei's face turned red. She silently hoped that, from now on, they'd be as close as brothers. The next morning, as the sun was just rising, I had already finished cleaning the kitchen, though I'd expected it. I couldn't help but notice that Kong Tong's sect was seriously poor. But hey, that didn't matter after all. Nothing could stand in the way of my dream to become a great hero and take on multiple wives. Difficulties? Half-tea, they were nothing. At this moment, I had to make the most of every second and leave a good impression on the sect leader and my senior brothers. With that in mind, I quickly did a few sets of pelvic exercises to keep my energy up. Just then, Liu Zhenwei walked into the kitchen. "Junior brother, are you the only one making breakfast?" I hurriedly replied, "It's the junior brother's duty." Liu Zhenwei smiled after hearing that. "You're the first kid I've seen this clever and hardworking." While I answered him, I couldn't help but think to myself, this guy's face is seriously too handsome. If I had even half his looks, I'd have it made less struggle, more rewards. Then, I explained, I lost my parents when I was young, so I had to learn how to be independent early. If my actions upset you, I apologize. Liu Zhenwei quickly waved his hand. "I didn't mean it that way. I just thought we're both orphans, so I wanted to come help you out." I was a bit speechless. This guy's way too polite. Ever since yesterday, he'd been apologizing like crazy. Was he trying to come off as the good guy? Then, Liu Zhenwei suggested he help me pick vegetables and cook. He really seemed to care about the brotherhood between us. On the surface, I smiled and said, "You just need to guide me from the side." But deep inside, I was thinking, no way. I can't let this guy become my real friend. I'm only using him. His reputation can help me make a name for myself, or maybe even use his influence to attract the ladies I'm interested in. Just then, the wooden rack holding the kitchenware suddenly broke, and a huge iron pot came crashing down toward me. In the nick of time, a hand grabbed my waist and tightly held my hand. It was none other than Liu Zhenwei. "Junior brother, are you okay?" The atmosphere immediately became awkward, and my face turned bright red. Oddly enough, I could even smell a faint fragrance from Liu Zhenwei. But before I could think too much, I realized something was off. "Senior brother, let go. I am fine. Don't worry." Liu Zhenwei quickly stepped back. His face flushing red, he hastily explained that it was all just a misunderstanding and assured me he had no ill intentions. I could only respond, saying it was no big deal. The mood was super weird now. I looked at Liu Zhenwei, who was full of guilt, and felt a bit helpless. "Senior brother, I can handle these chores myself. You should go and do what you need to." Liu Zhenwei nodded, agreeing verbally, but still didn't leave. Instead, he stayed and helped me clean up the kitchen. 2 months later, at the Kong Tong sect's training grounds, my master was explaining what truly matters in martial arts. Some say it's internal energy, so they keep swallowing all sorts of magical pills. Others say it's external strength, so they never stop swinging their fists. But the real key to power is the perfect balance between internal and external skills. Only when they work together in harmony can you unleash the full power of your martial arts. Master then emphasized, the foundation of it all is the horse stance. No slacking during training. Your posture must be perfect. I nodded, silently vowing to never slack off. This was for my energy, for strengthening my masculinity. Every bit of effort was worth it for my unfulfilled dreams. In the past, without any masculinity, even when I trained hard in external martial arts, I couldn't break free from the physical limitations. Now, all I wanted was to regain that masculinity and live a better life. Just then, Liu Zhenhui walked over with a smile. Master said today's training is over. I'm here to pick you up. That's when I realized the time had flown by. Though the training was done, it wasn't nearly enough for me. I knew that in order to get stronger quickly, I had to push myself even harder, and maybe try some new methods. That night, I quietly walked into a secluded little forest. If Master found out I was sneaking in extra training, I'd definitely get an earful. But for the desire burning in my heart, I decided to risk it all and dive into this late-night workout. I hadn't run far when I suddenly spotted a familiar figure, Liu Zhenhui. The surprise made me jump, and I tripped, tumbling to the ground. "Senior brother, what are you doing here?" I asked, still trying to steady myself. He coldly snapped, "I saw you sneaking out of Qingyan Pavilion, so I followed you. Didn't expect you'd be secretly training. Master warned us that pushing beyond our physical limits will only harm ourselves. I can't let you continue." Hearing that, I felt a wave of frustration. If I'd had a year of internal training, maybe I could have sensed his presence earlier. But now, if he told Master about this, it would cause a huge problem for me. I quickly came up with an excuse. "Senior brother, I'm not as gifted as you. I'm just an ordinary person who doesn't want to fall behind. I don't want Master to kick me out and leave me on the streets. If I don't train like this, I won't even have the right to stand beside you." My words seemed to make Liu Zhenhui pause. He seemed to recall his own childhood, the times he was abandoned, treated like a monster. It wasn't until Master appeared that he found hope. Eventually, he came to Kongtong Mountain with Master. "Sorry, junior brother," he said, his voice tinged with guilt. "I didn't realize you were going through so much. Don't worry, Master would never kick you out for learning slowly. As long as you're part of Kongtong's sect, whatever you do, I and Master will always support you. When you're tired, just like now, lean on me." The scene in front of me left me utterly speechless. Was this really happening? No way. I had imagined my first hug would be with a stunning beauty, not this. I tried to wriggle free, but no matter how hard I pulled, I couldn't escape. Damn it, Liu Zhenhui. But then, something felt off his chest. Was soft. Finally, Liu Zhenhui let go. "Junior brother, are you feeling better now?" I stared at his sincere face, and to my surprise, felt a bit sorry for him. I couldn't believe it. Liu Zhenhui, the so-called heavenly martial body, was actually some kind of androgynous condition. His chest might have been soft, but I was sure Liu Zhenhui was a man. This was the kind of thing the Palace Intelligence Network would dig up in my past life. After some time, Master told me that the basics were done, and I could scale back on the foundational training to focus on internal energy. Liu Zhenhui congratulated me with excitement, but honestly, I didn't feel like celebrating. Sure, learning internal energy was great, but Liu Zhenhui's constant interference lately had been driving me crazy. I sighed, shaking my head. Whatever, there were bigger issues to worry about. I told Master that I didn't want to reduce my basic training. Most people shift to internal energy, swordplay, and footwork after reaching a certain level in external training, but I wasn't like most people. I explained that I was just an average person, and only by working harder could I help my senior brothers rebuild our sect. Sure, it was slow, but in martial arts, the one with more strength always has the upper hand in a fight. Of course, my real reason was this: only by mastering external skills could I develop the perfect physique that would attract women. With my current looks, no matter how much I fawned over them, I could never compete with someone as handsome as Liu Zhenhui. So, a perfect body and lasting stamina were the keys to living the good life in the future. I looked Master straight in the eye, my resolve clear. "Master, please allow me to continue focusing on external training." Master looked at me in surprise. Could it be the zhexiu has realized his talent is just average? While this might be a mistake for those from bigger sects, for the struggling Kongtong sect, it was actually the wisest choice. Master didn't say anything else. Instead, he handed me a book. "Here, take this. It's the manual for the Shaoyang Heart Method. The martial world is ruthless to those without innate talent, but as long as you're willing to work hard, you can still become someone extraordinary." From now on, you're allowed to train both internal and external martial arts. I could hardly contain my joy as I took the manual. Everything was ready. Master began transferring his true QGY and instructed me to adjust my breathing according to the manual's instructions. At that moment, I could distinctly feel a surge of warmth gathering in my chest. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in my past life. It wasn't as cold and biting as the sunflower scripture, but more like warm sunlight flowing through my veins. Could this be Yang Qiu? Soon after, Master congratulated me on successfully learning internal energy. I could feel an unprecedented change within me, and I couldn't help but think to myself, finally, I'm no longer a eunuch. That night, Liu Zhenwei found Master and made his request. Master, I also want to increase my training in external martial arts. As a senior brother, it's my responsibility to guide my junior brother. Master's face lit up with a hint of joy. Ah, now you're beginning to understand what friendship means. Go ahead. Follow your heart. These are things you both need to learn. After Liu Zhenwei left, Master stood by the window, gazing out quietly, and sighed. Zhenhui and zhexiu, so young, already working hard to revive Kongtong sect. It seems that the late Master's wish will finally come true. Meanwhile, at the foot of Kongtong Sect Mountain, strange things were happening. Suddenly, a number of animals were found dead, their bodies gruesomely bitten, and then, a giant snake with 3 eyes slithered past the carcasses. The next day, the owner of a small farm discovered his destroyed livestock pens, his face filled with confusion. What happened here? I was planning to sell my animals at the market today, and now, they're all gone. The old farmer was furious, so angry that he fainted on the spot. You see, he had planned to sell his animals and donate the money to Kongtong sect. Though his family was poor, he still wanted to help, because supporting the sect was his lifelong dream. But his grandson didn't understand at all. What's so great about that beggar's nest? Kongtong sect? You're sick, and you still want to help them? With that, he stormed off in frustration. The old man didn't care about his grandson's words. He had never seen Kongtong sect at its prime. It was once the #1 sect in Gansu, the place that had given him hope and dreams, but ever since the evil cult invaded, that once admired Kongtong sect had been forgotten. At the same time, I was diligently training, feeling the warmth of yang energy building up in my dantian. My heart swelled with joy. This feeling, it was absolutely amazing. But every time I practiced Xiao Yang Heart technique, something felt off. Could it be because I had trained with the sunflower manual in my past life? Master once explained that our sex pattern is called reverse Tai Chi, symbolizing the teachings of our ancestors on the inversion of yin and yang. Water flows above, fire burns below, basically yin and yang reversed, creating the ultimate form of life. This made ignorant people think our sex martial arts were some twisted, unnatural magic, which led them to look down on us. But Kongtong sect has always upheld the righteous cause of eliminating the evil cults. Thinking about all of this, I couldn't help but feel grateful. Thank goodness I joined Kongtong sect. This is the martial arts I've been searching for. Just then, a loud voice snapped me out of my thoughts. A little boy, screaming at the top of his lungs, shouted, "If this is really the #1 sect in Gansu, a place that values justice, then please help us." Hearing the commotion, Liu Zhenwei stepped out of the room as well. We both approached the boy, who immediately began spilling out his entire story. I couldn't help but be confused. Why didn't you report this to the authorities? Your livestock was stolen, right? The boy, looking distressed, explained, "I don't think it was a human who did this. Even if they were stealing, why destroy the animals? Those were my grandfather's hard work over many years. He was planning to sell them to help Kongtong sect. Now, not only is his dream shattered, but he's fallen ill because of the stress. So please, we need your help." Looking at the poor little boy, Liu Zhenwei and I finally decided to go with him and check things out. However, when we saw the destroyed barn, I was shocked. It looked like the tracks of a snake, probably a rare giant python. I turned to Liu Zhenwei and asked, "Have you heard of any giant pythons around Mount Kongtong?" Liu Zhenwei shook his head. "No, if there were dangerous animals around Mount Kongtong, Master would have taken care of it already." I fell into deep thought. Mount Kongtong was a Taoist holy land, rich in spiritual energy. Ordinary animals here could mutate due to genetic changes. If Liu Zhenwei hadn't heard anything about it, that meant the giant python must have just appeared recently. A grin crept onto my face. If I could take down such a massive python, my energy would definitely skyrocket. So, I made up my mind to deal with it, but Liu Zhenwei looked a little concerned. Are you sure it's okay to go behind Master's back? I replied, the people of Mount Kongtong need help. We can't just turn our backs on them. Besides, this boy is a good, filial child. If it's really a giant python causing all this, we need to deal with it sooner rather than later to avoid more damage. Liu Zhenwei finally agreed. After sending the little boy home, Liu Zhenwei and I followed the trail on the ground, starting our search for the giant python. However, Liu Zhenwei couldn't shake the worry of going behind Master's back, and seemed a bit anxious. I reassured him, don't worry, senior brother, we're doing the right thing. After calming him down, I suddenly noticed that the giant python's trail had disappeared right here. Just then, Liu Zhenwei suddenly yelled, danger! In the next moment, the giant python lunged at me from above, sinking its fangs into my body. Looking at the massive snake, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. If I could survive this, not only would my energy increase, maybe I could find Kong Tong Sek's secret martial arts like in my past life. Liu Zhenwei rushed forward with his sword, ready to save me, but when he swung down, he frowned in shock. The python's scales were so tough that the strike didn't even leave a scratch. In fact, it whipped its tail and sent him flying. Realizing that Liu Zhenwei wasn't enough to handle this, I quickly grabbed a stick and aimed for the snake's eyes. The python let out a painful screech, and I used that opening to pull away. That's when I realized I'd been poisoned by the snake. When Liu Zhenwei finally caught up, I hurriedly warned him, be careful, we've been targeted by this rampaging giant python. Liu Zhenwei said, the python's body is too tough, and its attacks are fast. We need to find its weak spot and strike for a fatal blow. Upon hearing that, I quickly started thinking of a plan. Liu Zhenwei wasn't strong enough yet. He was no match for the giant python, although I had been poisoned by the snake. Thanks to the internal skills I mastered in my past life, I could hold on for a while. However, if Liu Zhenwei was also poisoned, we were as good as dead. I had to give him an opening to strike. I took off my clothes and said decisively, senior brother, I'll distract it. You use the lesser Yang Heart technique to enhance the sword's destructive power. Then take your chance to finish it. Liu Zhenwei looked at me in disbelief. You're injured. How could you Before he could finish, I darted forward like an arrow. Every creature has its weakness, and this giant python's weak spot was its blind right eye. So, I dodged back and forth in its blind spot and quickly wrapped my belt around its head. Seeing the moment was right, I signaled Liu Zhenwei to act. In the next second, he gathered his inner strength, raised his sword, and with one swift strike, decapitated the giant python. Liu Zhenwei stood frozen in shock, thinking its neck was the weak spot. Did junior brother know this all along? Was he intentionally guiding me to strike its neck? But before he could think any further, he saw me collapse onto the ground. At that moment, I felt a burning heat spread through my body, as if I were about to explode. It seemed the apothecary was right. The viper's venom was full of yang energy, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. If I could circulate my inner strength and expel the toxins, absorbing the yang energy, my vitality might even increase. However, in the next moment, I sensed something was wrong. Why wasn't my body obeying me? Seeing the situation, Liu Zhenwei immediately picked me up, his eyes glistening with tears, full of guilt. This is all my fault. I'll definitely save you. He carefully laid me down on the ground, and then, to my shock, he began sucking on my wound. I instantly snapped awake, my eyes wide. Wait a second, that's my first kiss. I struggled desperately. Stop sucking. Liu Zhenwei, thinking my tongue had also been poisoned, kindly sucked again. I froze on the spot, completely dumbfounded. Soon after, we started roasting the snake meat. The taste was fine, but just thinking about what had happened earlier made me nearly puke it all out. At that moment, Liu Zhenwei checked my pulse and said, "You're fine now." Curious, he asked, "How did you think of roasting snake meat? This is my first time eating it." I replied, "Snake meat is a great tonic, high in nutrition and boosts your energy." After eating our fill, we followed the giant python's trail and found its lair, a cave halfway up the mountain. Liu Zhenwei sensed the surrounding aura and said, "The spiritual energy here is strong." I thought to myself, as expected, His sensitivity to energy is extraordinary. As we entered the cave, he suddenly guessed, "This should be the legendary Guangsheng Breakthrough Cave." I nodded, thinking, according to legend, the Kong Tong sect's founder, the primordial sword emperor Wu Jizi, ascended to immortality in a place like this. Hearing that, I couldn't help but lick my lips, thinking, this place must have plenty of spirit herbs to restore energy. Just then, Liu Zhenhuai suddenly noticed a box of spiritual herbs scattered on the ground. I immediately deduced, the giant python must have eaten these pills, absorbed the spiritual energy, and that's why it became so enormous. Soon, we reached the end of the cave and saw a grand building. I couldn't help but exclaim in awe. At that moment, a set of ancient scrolls caught Liu Zhenhui's attention. He stared at the titles on them: 3 Yin True Secrets, 7 Kill Sword, Actuantian Sword, Jiayang Finger. These were all long-lost Kongtong sect manuals. Liu Zhenhui's eyes lit up, and he was even more certain that this was the place where our ancient ancestors practiced, the legendary Guangsheng Breakthrough Cave. Excited, he shared the good news with me, and I couldn't contain my excitement either. This meant there had to be even more treasures hidden in the cave. "Let's split up and search," I suggested. Liu Zhenhuai agreed, and I immediately rushed out, thinking to myself, I can't waste any more time. I must find the spiritual herbs first. If I absorb them earlier, I'll have more power to protect myself and get closer to my goal. Sure enough, fortune favored the determined. I finally found a spiritual herb. On the other side, Liu Zhenhuai also discovered a hot spring. Just as he was about to approach it, my sudden scream caught his attention. Thinking I was in danger, he rushed over immediately. However, the scene before him left him utterly stunned. This was Amitabha holy water, formed over thousands of years from the gathering of extreme yin energy. It was considered one of the finest spiritual medicines in the world. But the extreme yin energy inside it was harmful to men in every way. Liu Zhenhuai hurriedly stepped forward, concerned. "Junior brother, are you all right? I thought something major had happened." I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking to myself, that could have been a huge disaster. Because if a man accumulates too much yin energy in his body, he might gradually become more feminine. If I absorbed the Amitabha holy water, all the masculinity and energy I'd worked so hard to cultivate would go down the drain. Having dodged this bullet, I was so moved that I almost shed tears. But such a precious spiritual herb, not using it would be such a waste. So, I composed myself and turned to Liu Zhenhuai, suggesting, "Senior brother, this much Amitabha holy water is enough to open a person's ran and do meridians. Why don't you take this spiritual herb?" Liu Zhenhuai immediately refused. "But junior brother, you found it first. You should take it." I patiently explained, this top-tier herb would be wasted on someone as useless as me. If we divide it, the effect will definitely be weakened. So, for the sake of Kongtong sect's revival, you should take it alone. Liu Zhenhuai hesitated for a moment, but still disagreed. "Junior brother, your talent is too poor. You need the herbs to replenish yourself. I can reach a higher level through cultivation. You should take it." I was dumbfounded. This thick-headed guy actually took my nonsense seriously. In that case, I had to pull out my trump card. I gently took his hand and said softly, "Senior brother, what if I begged you as your junior? I want to give you the herb, it's all for you." Upon hearing this, Liu Zhenhuai's face flushed, and without a second thought, he agreed. As expected, he was still charmed by my beauty. I told Liu Zhenhuai that Amitabha holy water was an extreme yin medicine, and only yin-based internal techniques could fully absorb it. Liu Zhenhuai suddenly remembered the 3 yin secret technique he had seen earlier. He quickly flipped open the book and began reading. Seeing how fast he was flipping through the pages, I couldn't help but think, truly, he is a genius with the heavenly martial physique. Soon, he had memorized the incantation, tied the cloth strips around his body, and prepared to ingest the medicine. Since this Amitabha holy water was offered to me by junior brother, no matter what happens, I won't let his goodwill go to waste, he murmured to himself, drinking the holy water with determination. However, as soon as he swallowed the water, the reaction inside his body caused his eyes to widen in shock. The cold yin energy began to rampage through his body shaking violently, and his heart felt as though it had been frozen. Seeing this, my heart tightened. I thought to myself, could it be that Liu Zhenhui can't control this overwhelming yin energy? As Liu Zhenhui's body was slowly covered by a thin layer of ice, he soon entered his mental world. Childhood memories began to play out before his eyes. A crow killed a family of swallows, so he killed the crow in return. At that moment, the inner demon suddenly turned to face Liu Zhenhui and coldly said, "Do you know why everyone is cursing me? Why do they call me a monster?" Before Liu Zhenhui could respond, the inner demon lunged at him with a hideous expression. At the same time, I sensed something was wrong. I had originally planned for him to absorb the spiritual medicine, grow quickly, and then use his reputation to win the heart of a beauty. But now, it seemed he was likely being invaded by his inner demon. Although I didn't want to get physically involved with him, I couldn't just watch this potential powerhouse turn into useless paper. So, I began to transfer my inner energy to him. Senior brother, hurry and absorb the yin energy from the Amitabha holy water, then chant the 3 yin secret technique. Use the acupoints I told you to guide the cold yin energy. If you don't focus, you'll go mad. At that moment, Liu Zhenhui heard my cry, but his neck was being gripped by the inner demon, leaving him unable to move. Seeing him in greater danger, I knew that for my bright future, I could not let him become useless. Liu Zhenhui, you're lucky. Your junior brother in his past life was an absolute master. I infused him with a powerful surge of inner energy. Liu Zhenhui was still desperately struggling, trying to break free from the inner demon's control. Suddenly, he picked up a stone and threw it with all his might, smashing it into the inner demon's head. Having successfully broken free from the control, the inner demon, enraged, charged at him and sent Liu Zhenhui flying several meters. As Liu Zhenhui lost his ability to fight back, he despaired, thinking, "Am I really going to die so uselessly?" At that moment, a voice rang out in his mind, "Senior brother, don't give up." Then, a powerful wave of inner energy surged into his body. "Senior brother, pull yourself together. Don't let the inner demon defeat you. The most important thing now is to absorb the spiritual medicine. I will help expand your acupoints. Though it will be painful for me, it will be worth it to create an opportunity for you." Upon hearing these words, Liu Zhenhui's fighting spirit was reignited. "My junior brother is risking everything to help me. I can't let his effort go to waste." With that, he stood up and counterattacked, landing a punch that sent the inner demon flying. He then sat down cross-legged and began absorbing the Amitabha holy water. The inner demon, sensing that Liu Zhenhui had exhausted his inner energy to suppress the yin energy, took the opportunity to awaken. As long as it could replenish its energy, defeating the inner demon would no longer be difficult. However, just as it was regaining strength, the inner demon charged toward Liu Zhenhui without a second thought. In the critical moment, I hurriedly injected a surge of inner energy into Liu Zhenhui. The next second, dozens of wooden sticks bound the inner demon tightly. Soon, Liu Zhenhui opened up his Ren and Du meridians, but the inner demon shattered the restraints and charged toward him madly. Seeing the situation was dire, Liu Zhenhui quickly absorbed the Amitabha holy water. With a fierce glance, he sent the inner demon plunging into an abyss. At the same time, I felt his aura gradually stabilize. I gestured for him to send the cold yin energy into the Bai Hui acupoint. This way, he was not far from breaking through to a higher level. Faced with my sincere care, Liu Zhenhui was momentarily lost in thought. "So, my junior brother has been thinking of me from the very beginning," he thought, deeply moved. "He not only gave up the most important thing for me, but even saved my life in the crisis. Thank you for taking such good care of me. I will never forget this kindness. No matter if the whole world is against you, I will stand by your side without hesitation." A moment later, Liu Zhenhui successfully broke through the Ren and Du meridians, and his body entered a state of complete immersion. But what puzzled me was why his chest seemed more pronounced than that of an ordinary man. Could it be due to the Amitabha holy water? Suddenly, I had an epiphany. No wonder the Liu Zhenhui in my past life never paid attention to women. It turns out his physical condition caused him so many problems. At this moment, I noticed a cluster of plants emitting a red glow. As I got closer, I realized they were red sun moss, known for replenishing energy. Seeing this, I couldn't help but do a few sets of pelvic exercises, then devoured the plants eagerly. It was the perfect opportunity to cultivate. Normally, I would transform the energy of the herbs into inner power, but this time, I decided to spread the red sun moss's strength throughout my body. Only by making my body stronger could I increase my energy. Though red sun moss wasn't as powerful as the Amitabha holy water, having a body immune to all diseases was still a great benefit. After my cultivation, however, I realized Liu Junhui had disappeared. Had he gone to bathe? Since this was Wu Jizi's secret cave, there had to be some kind of bathing facility. I was planning to bathe with him, but to my surprise, Liu Junhui, a grown man, was extremely reluctant about it. I had no choice but to agree to wait outside, which seemed to relieve him. Almost got caught by my junior brother. I'm lucky he didn't find out I'm actually a woman. My master always said that only men weren't looked down upon by the people in the martial world, and wouldn't encounter too many problems. Though it had been a close call earlier, at least I had absorbed the Amitabha holy water. If it hadn't been for my junior brother, I'd probably have turned into a useless person by now. Why is my junior brother so kind? Why does it have to be me, his senior brother? At this thought, Liu Junhui couldn't help but blush. He began to entertain the idea, even without difficulties. He wanted to take care of his junior brother for the rest of his life. But soon, he snapped back to reality, his expression changing. What am I thinking? My feelings for my junior brother can only be brotherly love. After all, whether it was rebuilding a sect or standing by my junior brother's side, I couldn't do it relying on the body of a woman. I must be a man. Meanwhile, as I waited outside, the view inside the cave left me in awe. The night pearls embedded all around spoke volumes about the wealth Kong Tong sect once possessed. This sect, once the strongest in the world, had been founded by the Hunyuan Sword Emperor, Wu Jizi. Who could have imagined that it would fall into such decay? 50 years ago, Kong Tong sect was slaughtered with only one survivor, Lin Baixin, the Sky Thunder Sword. With the sect's former glory long gone and all the advanced manuals burned, he only took in one disciple during his lifetime. That disciple was the current sect leader of Kong Tong Fumo Swordmaster, Quan Yin. Though his title sounds impressive, everyone in the martial world knows it's a mockery, because the evil Ying Society, a dark sect that aimed to absorb Kong Tong, had deliberately given him this name to ridicule him for losing the Fumo sword technique. Luckily, we managed to find some lost manuals in the cave this time, which was a great treasure. Though Wu Jizi hadn't foreseen the creation of this cave, it was nothing short of a windfall for the current Kong Tong sect. To remain hidden, Wu Jizi erased all rumors about the cave, so the evil cult couldn't locate it. But one thing puzzled me: why did Wu Jizi erase all traces of this sacred cave from history? After all, before the evil cult's invasion, Kong Tong sect was the most powerful in Gansu. How could Wu Jizi possibly have predicted that Kong Tong sect would fall into such decline? Was it just for the sake of seclusion? What really intrigued me, though, was how Liu Junhui, in his previous life, had found this place. At this moment, Liu Junhui emerged from the bathhouse. "Junior brother, you should go take a bath too," he said. The instant I saw him, I froze, my face instantly turning red. Could it be the effect of the Mituo sacred water? His face, it looked even more charming than usual. I couldn't help but punch myself in the face. What's wrong with me? He's just a big man. But honestly, Liu Junhui was looking more and more handsome, and he even smelled faintly of flowers. Should I carry a sachet too? Maybe I should pay more attention to my appearance. I quickly dismissed the thought. Forget it. No matter how I dress up, this ugly face is beyond saving. After finishing our baths, I saw Liu Junhui organizing the martial arts manuals we had found. Right now, Kong Tong sect only had the Shaoyang heart method, but here, we had not only recovered the 3 Yin true scripture, but also discovered all the internal cultivation techniques. When the Shaoyang heart method and the 3 Yin true scripture are cultivated to their peak, one can move on to learn the even stronger Hunyuan Yang Qi Gong. But what puzzled me was that we hadn't found the Hunyuan Yin Qi Gong or the Fumo sword technique. According to intel from the palace in my previous life, Liu Junhui had found the Fumo sword technique here. And the palace's intel was never wrong. This meant that Wu Jizi must have left the sword manual in some other way. But how would Wu Jizi, who had reached the life and death realm, leave behind his sword technique? Just then, Liu Junhui suddenly remembered something. Right, Earlier I found a huge sword scar in the cave next to the bathhouse. Upon hearing this, I immediately gestured for Liu Zhenhui to lead me there so I could take a look. When we arrived at the destination, the sight before us took my breath away. "This is simply magnificent," I exclaimed. "Senior brother, it seems there's something hidden behind this wall," Liu Zhenhui pointed out. "The mechanism on this wall was left over 300 years ago. If you exert too much or too little force when opening it, the mechanism will seal the entire cave. Therefore, the only way to open it was by using the Fumo sword technique." Luckily, I knew a bit of the Fumo sword technique's formula. In the past, the royal family had collected the martial arts secrets of all the major sects to counterbalance the martial world, and they had developed methods to crack these techniques. Although I wasn't a master in all martial arts, Kongtong sect's Fumo sword technique was so famous that I had learned a bit of it. So, I immediately recognized the sword scars as the ones left by Wu Jizi using the Fumo sword technique. I couldn't help but smile. There must be treasures left by Wu Jizi behind this stone wall. I continued to explore the cave. Every martial art has its unique steps, and everything in this cave was a clue left by Wu Jizi. Soon, I found sword marks on the ground. Following the marks, I found the spot to apply the footwork. Finally, behind a stone wall covered by vines, I swung a sword and uncovered dozens of sword scars. Because the Fumo sword technique left by Wu Jizi was too profound, Liu Zhenhui and I spent 2 days deciphering it. Liu Zhenhui was the first to notice that the lightning-shaped marks on the stone wall were the starting points for the Fumo sword technique on another stone wall. We racked our brains to decode the sword technique, combining all the Kongtong sect manuals along with my memory, and finally derived the correct formula. Next, it was time to teach Liu Zhenhui how to practice the sword technique. I never imagined that the first time I had such close contact with someone in this life would be with a big man. Damn Liu Zhenhui! Through our relentless efforts, Liu Zhenhui finally mastered the Fumo sword technique. However, when he looked at the sword in his hand, his face was full of doubt. "Now, I just need to use the Fumo sword technique on the stone wall. Right, is it really safe?" I nodded in response. Master once said that without mastering the Hunyuan Ye Qigong, one cannot perform the perfect Fumo sword technique, but the sword marks on the stone wall are meant for those who have reached the peak of the sword technique. If you weren't a heavenly martial body, we wouldn't even be able to repair this technique. Liu Zhenhui asked, "Then, is there no other way to open the stone wall?" I motioned for him not to worry, as I already had a solution in mind. After all, I had once been the leader of an intelligence organization, and my skill in using QGI sensitivity to disable mechanisms was second to none in the world. Originally, I had planned to use the sharp edge of the Fumo sword technique to unlock the seal, but because this was an ancient mechanism, apart from the core device, the other parts couldn't differentiate between sword energy and sword intent. As long as we exploited this, we could easily open the stone wall even if we hadn't reached the peak of the Fumo sword technique. Soon, with my guidance, I nodded at Liu Zhenhui, signaling success. Liu Zhenhui understood immediately and began preparing to perform the Fumo sword technique. Seeing this, a smile crept onto my face. "Liu Zhenhui, unleash your full potential. This lifetime, you will be different from your past." As Liu Zhenhui began to step forward, he suddenly dashed forward. A wave of tremendous sword energy slashed down with incredible force. The next moment, the narrow stone wall slowly opened. Liu Zhenhui, filled with excitement, grabbed both of my hands and grinned broadly. "Junior brother, you're amazing. Thank you so much. You've actually taught me the Kongtong sect's ultimate technique." I reminded him, "Don't get too excited just yet. We need to check what Wu Jizi left behind." However, as we entered the stone wall, I unknowingly lost consciousness. When I woke up, I found myself tightly chained by iron shackles. In front of me, 2 men were whispering. Before I could react, the man who had deprived me of my masculinity in my past life turned to look at me, a faint sneer on his face. "Little brat, you should be thanking me. After all, living in the palace is better than starving out here. Who knows, you might even become a powerful eunuch, controlling the entire court. Don't forget my kindness when that happens." I immediately felt a surge of anger. What he said was true. In my past life, I had indeed held immense power. But what did it matter? With all that power, I still a man who lost manhood. As I thought about this, a burst of blinding light exploded within me. Although I had lost all my internal energy in this rebirth, my spiritual power had not disappeared. Using that, I easily broke free from the chains. Before the two men could react, I instantly froze them in place. If this had happened in my spiritual world, my martial arts would never have disappeared. With a flick of my fingers, several ice spikes shot into their bodies, instantly turning them into frowns and chunks of flesh. Although Zheng Qian's fate was still uncertain, Wang San had already been dealt with by my own hands. Such crude illusions, they actually fooled me, I sneered. But at that moment, the illusion quietly shifted. A slender jade-like hand suddenly reached out from behind me. I turned around and found myself standing in a lavish pleasure palace filled with wine and meat. Dear husband, you're so amazing. Calm down and come give me a hug. This only fuels my anger even more. Such a waste of effort, trying to confuse my mind with a tailor-made illusion array. But I was not someone so easily swayed. Unless it was mutual affection in the heat of passion, no matter how beautiful the woman in the illusion, it had no effect on me. With a single punch, I shattered the illusion. Suddenly, the sight before me took me by surprise. I saw a man radiating immense inner power walking toward me. Before I could even ask who he was, he suddenly raised his sword and attacked me with terrifying force. Boom! His sword slashed through the air like a violent storm. In the face of such overwhelming pressure, I instantly realized this man was none other than the mixed Yuan Sword Emperor, Wu Jizi, the strongest martial artist of Kongtong sect from 300 years ago, the one who stopped the demonic sect's invasion and saved the martial world, the #1 martial expert under heaven. I dodged quickly and immediately shouted, "I'm not your enemy." But Wu Jizi seemed to already see through my identity. His cold voice cut through the air. "You're clearly a master of spiritual power, but your movements are as clumsy as a beginner's. Your soul is filled with rebellious energy. Tell me, how can I trust you're not a spy from the demonic sect?" At this point, I was too exhausted to fight back. As his sword energy came crashing toward me again, with a desperate twist, I suddenly spun around, activated Little Sun Heart method, and dropped to my knees. Kongtong sect disciple, Li Zhexiu, pay respects to the Grandmaster. Wu Jizi frowned, staring at me in disbelief. He immediately altered the course of his sword, the air humming with power. After a long pause, he sheathed his blade and burst into laughter. "Clever disciple, since you can activate the Little Sun Heart method, you must truly be a Kongtong sect disciple." With that, he helped me up. "The test ends here. I am the mixed Yuan Sword Emperor, Wu Jizi. This is just a fragment of my consciousness left behind 300 years ago. I've never encountered a disciple like you before, one who holds both rebellious techniques and the way of immortals." I raised an eyebrow. "So what? Even if I use rebellious techniques, I'm still a disciple of Kongtong sect, right?" Wu Jizi ignored my words and muttered to himself. Could this be the will of heaven? Yes. To counter rebellious techniques, one must learn to wield rebellious techniques. I was completely confused. Isn't all this just about regaining my manhood and enjoying life again? But now, I had to ask him something. Is the legacy left behind by the mixed Yuan Sword Emperor behind that stone wall martial skills? Wu Jizi blinked in surprise at my directness. He paused, then murmured, "What if I said yes?" I quickly bowed deeply and said, "Then please don't teach the skills to me. Could you pass them to my senior brother instead? I just want to be second in command, enjoying the good life. As long as I can master the Kongtong sect manuals, I'll be satisfied." I added, "Reviving Kongtong sect should fall to Liu Zhenhui. With the mixed Yuan Sword Emperor's guidance, he'll surely gain unimaginable strength." Wu Jizi shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "You're so naive, don't you get it yet? You were destined to come here, because there will be a calamity brought by a rebellious star in the future." I still didn't understand what he meant. The mixed Yuan Sword Emperor was the great hero who stopped the demonic sect's invasion 300 years ago. He should have solved all of the demonic sect's issues back then. So, what he was saying now, does this mean the demonic sect is going to return? Wu Jizi continued. The Blood Sect is an extremist faction made up of the most radical elements of the Heavenly Demon Sect. 300 years ago, the blood sect's leader, Blood Sovereign, led his followers to indiscriminately massacre during the chaos of war. It's said that rivers of blood flowed, and even the emperor of the Yuan dynasty had to flee for his life. After the blood sect took over Central Plains, I led the Martial Alliance and engaged in a life-or-death battle with them at Panyang Lake. In the end, the Martial Alliance won. After the Battle of Panyang Lake, the Ming dynasty was established, and martial artists gained privileges from the royal family. That's when the royal family officially acknowledged that we had defeated the blood sect. Wu Jizi paused, his face becoming solemn. There's more, but I can't say it. After hearing this, my heart sank. Anger and unease churned inside me. Damn it. It seems the situation is worse than I imagined. In my past life, the blood sect had been relatively quiet. But this time, my destiny had already taken a drastic turn. If the blood sect and the demonic sect invade the Central Plains together, the consequences would be unimaginable. I had originally planned to help Liu Zhenwei smoothly take over and live a carefree life. But now, two massive threats had appeared. Once war breaks out, men, women and children alike will be thrown into panic and despair. What if future wives die from exhaustion and grief because of the war? Who will take responsibility for that? Just thinking about this made my whole body shake with rage. I will not allow such a future to happen, nor will I let my world be filled with this kind of worry and sorrow. My thoughts quickly shifted. Since the mixed Yuan Sword Emperor chose me, there must be a reason for it. If the end goal is to make me stronger, there's no need to hesitate. I must seize this opportunity. But that doesn't mean I want to replace my senior brother, becoming the main force to revive our sect. I just want to ensure there's a little more security in the future, to make sure nothing unexpected happens. Wu Jizi suddenly spoke. Are you ready to receive guidance? I was filled with confusion. What preparation? I'm a disciple of Kong Tong sect. I should already be qualified, right? Wu Jizi saw right through my thoughts, sneering. You've been thinking about the pleasures of the wine pools and forests in your illusions. You talk a good game, but are you really planning to use the secret techniques of our sect for those vulgar pleasures? His words made a cold sweat break out on my back. After a moment of silence, I straightened up and seriously explained, my intentions are not so low. The pleasures of the clouds and rain are natural and just. Besides, I'm not the kind of person you think I am. I wasn't fooled by the illusion. Isn't that the best proof? I just want to live happily with the woman I love. How can you compare me to those evil cults? Wu Jizi couldn't help but feel a headache. Such a strange philosophy. But what about the women who like you? Won't they suffer from jealousy? I responded with firm resolve. I guarantee that what you're saying won't happen. Seeing my determination, Wu Jizi laughed helplessly. I admit your ambitions are good. Having the resolve to defy destiny is rare, though I suppose your mind not being quite normal is understandable. Then, Wu Jizi prepared to teach me martial arts, but he warned me to abandon all previous martial practices. I secretly rejoiced. These Eunuch martial arts, even if I couldn't use them, it didn't matter. If I could, I'd honestly hope they just disappeared from this world. Wu Jizi saw my resolve and praised me highly. Your awareness is impressive. Then, he began to impart the ultimate martial technique of Kong Tong sect, the mixed Yuan martial extreme path. He said that by applying the profound principles of yin and yang to the greater universe, and mastering the two merging divine technique to its peak, one could comprehend the mysteries of the mixed Yuan martial extreme path. Lastly, Wu Jizi didn't forget to remind me, although you possess both rebellious power and the ways of immortality, you must focus on mastering the two merging divine technique. I suddenly opened my eyes and saw Liu Zhenwei next to me. I quickly shook him awake. Liu Zhenwei told me that he had just seen Kong Kong sect destroyed. I explained that this was an illusion created by the mixed Yuan Sword Emperor. Before Liu Zhenwei could fully process this, I suddenly noticed a mysterious chest not far away. That must be the two merging divine technique left behind by the mixed Yuan Sword Emperor. But just then, I heard the sound of falling stones from above. In an instant, I realized that the force sustaining the illusion from Wu Jizi had disappeared. The cave was about to collapse. I quickly ran to the chest, grabbed the two merging divine technique, and then sprinted toward the exit with Liu Zhenwei. we finally managed to escape the danger. Both of us let out a sigh of relief. Although the secret cave had been completely destroyed, at least we had retrieved the long-lost martial technique. At this point, Liu Zhenwei gestured for us to head back. I happily agreed. However, before we left, there was one more place I had to go. The scene shifted. A young boy stood motionless with his luggage, a look of worry etched on his face. Since he had gone to Kong Tong sect for help, he hadn't received any news from me or Liu Zhenwei. Tears silently welled up in his eyes as he thought to himself, if it's my fault, what will happen if something happens to the two brothers because of me? At that moment, his mother's scolding voice rang out. Your grandfather is not feeling well, and now you want to cause trouble too? Grandfather's voice was filled with reluctance. Are we really leaving here? His mother nodded. Our family is already poor, and we lost our only source of income, the livestock barn. We need to go somewhere we can support ourselves. Just then, I arrived with Liu Zhenwei. I'm Li Zhexiu, a disciple of Kong Tong sect, and this is my senior brother, Liu Zhenwei. Your son asked us to catch the person who destroyed the livestock barn, and we've already dealt with it. His mother's face was full of surprise. Are you saying it's our son Yingxi? The boy, upon seeing us, shouted excitedly, Brother! And rushed towards us. I quickly explained to the boy. The one who destroyed your livestock barn was a giant snake that turned into a monster. Then I told him, thanks to your report, we were able to avoid further damage. As I spoke, I took something out of my bag. This is the inner core of the giant snake. If your grandfather eats it, he'll recover his health very quickly. After bidding farewell to the boy and his family, Liu Zhenwei gazed into the distance, lost in thought. If we were a little stronger, could we repay more of those who supported Kong Tong sect? I suddenly interrupted his thoughts. We need to hurry back. On the way back, my mind was in turmoil. Though we had gained a great fortune through the young boy and the giant snake, it also burdened me with a huge mission. In my past life, Liu Zhenwei never obtained the Fumo sword technique, and the technique never appeared in the world. Yet, the secret cave still collapsed. This meant that, in my previous life, someone must have found the secret cave, just like us. What if that person was a descendant of the blood sect? What if, in order to prevent history from repeating itself, they destroyed the secret cave? What if, in the past, they managed to avoid the palace's intelligence network, hiding far away and plotting their schemes? The unseen threat was always there. We would need to be even more cautious from now on. After a while, Liu Zhenwei and I finally arrived at the foot of the sect. Although the unexpected fortune had brought us joy, we were both deeply troubled. Because how could we explain to the master about leaving without permission? At that moment, we suddenly heard our master's voice from behind. When he confirmed it was us, his face immediately changed. The next second, he slapped each of us across the face. Do you know I've been searching for you too? What on earth happened? Now, tell me everything. No lies. After hearing the full story, our master asked once more to confirm if it was true. I nodded, and took out the night pearl and the manual we had brought back from the secret cave. Upon seeing the long-lost manual, our master's eyes welled up with tears of excitement. I can't believe it. The ancestors' wish to restore the sect may finally be fulfilled. Suddenly, our master closed the book, his expression turning serious. Although you two made a mistake by leaving without permission, you've also achieved the great feat of finding our sect's lost technique. This time, I won't hold it against you. With that, he embraced both Liu Zhenwei and me in a tight hug. After a moment, the master finally finished transcribing the Fuo sword technique, and his gaze shifted to the night pearl. With this, we will never have to worry about hunger again, he said. At that moment, I suddenly spoke up. The Erhe divine technique and the night pearl should not be made known to outsiders. The master looked puzzled. The Erhe divine technique is fine, but our sect is in dire need of money. We'll have no choice but to sell the night pearl. Actually, my suggestion stemmed from something Mixed Yuan Sword Emperor had said about the ominous star that defies heaven's will. At first, I didn't think much of it, but soon, I began to worry. Although Mixed Yuan Sword Emperor never explicitly mentioned anything about defying heaven's will, whoever he was, he surely represented the blood sect. In my past life, the country had completely wiped out the blood sect, but the intelligence departments hadn't shared much more information about them. What they didn't know was that the reincarnation ritual activated in my previous life was an ancient secret technique of the blood sect. These people often disguised themselves as doctors to make a living. At that time, what mattered most to me was regaining my masculinity, so I didn't interfere much with the darker side of the martial world. But this life was different. I hadn't even held the hand of a peerless beauty, much less enjoyed the pleasures of the bedroom. Given this, announcing the discovery of the Fumo sword technique was foolish. We had no idea when the demon sex clause would strike. So, to deal with these shadowy figures, we had to quietly cultivate our own strength. I then explained to the master, right now, rebuilding the sect is our first priority. The Night Pearl is an incredibly rare treasure, and if we don't have the strength to protect it, it could bring about the destruction of our sect if others set their sights on it. The master nodded in agreement. I've heard that recently the underworld gang Shi Yinghui has been growing bolder. It seems we can't act recklessly. With that, the master locked away the Night Pearl, then smiled at us. Today is a day worth celebrating. Let's go to the restaurant and enjoy a meal together. I frowned teased for a moment. Then my eyes sparkled with anticipation. That's the place where the #1 beauty of the right path is said to appear. Soon, under the master's laid, we arrived at Huading County, located at the foot of the Sex Mountain. Looking at the desolate scene before me, I couldn't help but wonder, is there really a place to eat around here? The master replied, there used to be many inns here that catered to visitors of the Kongtong sect, but with the decline of the sect, the local business scene has also faded, especially after the Shi Yinghui took control. The atmosphere on the streets has become increasingly dangerous, but fortunately, the last restaurant in Huading County is still in operation. We entered the restaurant, and in stark contrast to the desolate exterior, the inside was lively and bustling. At that moment, the restaurant owner, Xu Guanyuan, hurried over to greet us. Master, long time no see. After exchanging pleasantries, his gaze shifted to me. The master introduced me. This is Li Zhexiu, a new disciple of our sect. He then added, Xu Guanyan has been of great help to the finances of the Kongtong sect. I quickly bowed to show my gratitude. Xu Guangwan, visibly excited, responded, with such a courteous and remarkable disciple joining the Kongtong sect, I'm sure the reputation of our sect will soon echo throughout the martial world once more. I was completely taken aback. Wait, I just greeted him. Why is his reaction so exaggerated? However, when I looked around, I noticed that all the guests in the restaurant seemed genuinely happy that I had joined the Kongtong sect. On the other hand, Xu Guanyuan, watching this scene, showed no surprise. Little brother, are you shocked? Then, a proud smile appeared on his face. Everyone here hopes to see the Kongtong sect rise again. Their goal is to eliminate the oppressive, exploited Eveline Association. At that moment, a man suddenly approached the master, holding a cloth bag. It's an honor to meet you. I hope this money can help with the Kongtong sect's reconstruction. The master immediately expressed his gratitude and assured everyone, my 2 disciples will certainly revive the Kongtong sect. Then, the master turned to Xu Guanyuan and asked, why don't I see your daughter? I was hoping to introduce her to Zhexiu. Xu Guanyan replied, Xiaolin went out to deliver something, she should be back soon. Upon hearing this, I was startled and began to look around eagerly. The only daughter of the restaurant owner, the famous first beauty of the righteous path in the martial world, Xu Xiaolin was finally about to make her appearance. In the previous life, it was Liu Zhenhui and Xu Xiaolin who revived the Kongtong sect. If Liu Zhenhui was the vanguard of the Kongtong sect, then Xu Xiaolin was undoubtedly the sect's grand manager, a person of real power. Not only did she possess the rare beauty of mixed heritage, but her cold personality and overwhelming strength earned her the title of the Cold Soul Sword Maiden. In fact, some people even set up fan clubs in her honor. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but smile. How could Li Zhexiu miss the chance to see such a beauty? Let me take a look at her stunning face. As the door slowly opened, my gaze was immediately drawn to a silky strand of hair. Smooth as satin, my anticipation reached its peak. But the next second, the person who appeared before me was actually a petite and adorable little girl. I was shocked. What? The first beauty of the righteous path is actually a child. Quickly, I realized this was 50 years ago. She should be a younger sister, even younger than me. Although she was a beautiful girl, seeing her reminded me of the emperor from back in the day, which instantly extinguished any thoughts of trying to win her over. At this moment, Zhexiu Guangyuan patted his daughter's head and introduced. These are the leader and disciples of the Kantong sect. Go ahead and say hello. Zhexiu Xiaolin reluctantly muttered a hello. I froze for a moment, then became utterly enchanted by her cute appearance. So what if she was a little sister? She would grow up to be the future first beauty. If I wanted to be her good brother, I had better start earning some goodwill now. So I immediately put on a righteous look. I am Li Zhexiu, a new disciple of the Kantong sect. It's an honor to meet Miss Xu. But she only gave me a look full of hostility, then turned and ran back to her room. A sect that can't even protect ordinary civilians. What's the point of knowing them? Both the Kantong sect and the entire martial world are repulsive. Zhexiu Guanyan quickly apologized. Please forgive me, my daughter is a bit shy. Her reaction didn't really surprise me. After all, according to information from my past life, her mother had died during a conflict between the righteous and evil sects, and the Kantong sect, as the only righteous sect, had failed to provide any help. Her resentment was completely understandable. After enjoying a delicious meal, Xu Xiaolin reappeared in my line of sight. Although the outcome wasn't perfect, at least I had met the legendary first beauty of the righteous path. This trip wasn't a wasted one after all. At that moment, Liu Zhenhui suddenly leaned in close to my ear and whispered, "Junior brother, did you like the food today?" I was startled and quickly pulled away. Loved it, absolutely loved it. Hearing my response, Liu Zhenhui broke into a happy smile. Watching this, I couldn't help but feel a sense of frustration. I thought to myself, why is his face becoming more and more handsome? What if Zhexiu Xiaolin joins Kantong sect and falls for him instead? With that thought, my mood sank, so I immediately turned to Master and suggested, could we make it a regular thing to eat out like this? Master looked at me in confusion. Do you like the taste here? I replied, while the taste is great, it's really the contributions they've made to the sect's rebuilding that motivate me. Every time I see them, I feel more driven to work hard. Hearing this, Master nodded in approval and agreed to my request. But little did he know, I already had a deeper plan in mind. Forget about trying to compete with senior brother's looks. The most important thing now is to build a good relationship with Zhexiu Xiaolin. In the dead of night, I began preparing for my next encounter with Xu Xiaolin. After doing a round of pelvic exercises, I moved on to the essential part of my energy strengthening routine, hanging heavy objects, supported solely by my masculinity. Since I gained so much from the secret cave, my manliness definitely had to be stronger. I took a deep breath and started swinging like a madman. Day after day, year after year, my hanging weights gradually increased from small stones to large bricks. A year later, I stood in front of the mirror, feeling full of pride. Perfect, perfect. This is the true definition of a top-tier manly man. However, just as I was about to activate my yang energy technique, my masculinity suddenly reacted. Damn it, the side effects kicked in again. It turns out that ever since I met the primordial sword emperor in the secret cave, my inner energy has been messed up. Every time I run the yang energy technique, my masculinity instinctively stands up. I still haven't figured out why this happens. If this keeps happening, I'll definitely be labeled a pervert. At that moment, I heard Liu Zhenhui's voice from outside the door, and my anger flared up instantly. Why does someone always interrupt me at these crucial moments? I had no choice but to open the door in the most awkward position possible. Senior brother, is something wrong? Liu Zhenhui looked at me with confusion. Junior brother, are you feeling unwell? I hurriedly denied it, but then he hesitated before awkwardly telling me he wanted to go eat at a restaurant together. After saying this, he walked off without looking back. I sighed in relief. Thank goodness my masculinity wasn't exposed. The scene shifted, and Zhexiu Xiaolin brought the tea to our table. But before I could even thank her, she quickly turned around and ran off. I couldn't help but smile slightly. Compared to the disdain she showed me the first time we met, her attitude had clearly improved a lot. However, what struck me as odd was that the usually bustling restaurant was now completely empty, not a single customer in sight. Just as I was wondering about this, Xu Guangyuan approached with a smile, greeting us. "Gentlemen, long time no see, would you like to order the same dishes as last time?" I nodded, and as he turned to leave, his body wobbled and he almost fell. I rushed forward to support him, asking, "Has something happened to the restaurant?" Xu Guangyuan sighed, clearly deciding not to hide anything anymore. "Our restaurant might be closing soon. The bastards from the Evil Yin Association have been extorting huge protection fees from the merchants in Huoshan County, using that to expand their power. A few months ago, they targeted our restaurant, deliberately creating conflict at the entrance to hurt our business, even threatening other merchants not to come. Even though I've tried to hold on, without customers, the losses keep piling up, and I can't keep this up anymore. I'm worried that if this continues, even Xiaolin will be affected." Upon hearing this, I suddenly understood everything. It turned out that the reason Xu Xiaolin had joined Kongtong sect was because her father couldn't stand the harassment from the Evil Yin Association. Although the Evil Yin Association was just a gang, they had the backing of the huge Black Dragon Gang in Sichuan. The now declining Kongtong sect was no match for them. Just then, the restaurant's door was kicked open. We turned around to see a few members of the Evil Yin Association standing there, wearing malicious grins and glaring at us. "You said you couldn't pay today, so you were going to hand the restaurant over to us. We've warned you many times. Haven't you woken up yet? If you don't have the money, then you might as well sell your daughter." After saying that, one of the gang members lunged toward Xu Xiaolin. "Who would have thought that a freak like your mother would have such a beautiful daughter? Starting today, you'll be working at our place to pay off the debt," he said as he grabbed Xu Xiaolin and tried to drag her out of the door. I immediately shouted to stop him, and then quickly threw a pair of chopsticks at him. The chopsticks hit his hand with pinpoint accuracy. Seeing this, the other two pulled out their knives, shouting angrily, "A fallen Kongtong sect dares to lay a hand on us." However, the injured man looked at me with a terrified expression. "Big brother, that's not the point. This guy's masculine energy hits standing up.